All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back into another video. Today's video is about the newest Chronicles episode. Mind you that there's still two more for this one season, this first season of Chronicles, and apparently one of them is a banger. This was stated by Cryptech on Twitter, so you can expect two more videos at least on this entire season of Chronicles, the first season, regarding Atlas, Darkness, and so on. And speaking of Atlas, this one specifically will be talking about Atlas and him time traveling once again because of how things have turned out to be. Now, there is, however, a couple of details in this story that I do not agree with, and therefore I'm going to be talking about it and probably, just giving my side of things and explain why to me it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm not really criticizing anybody. Obviously, the people who wrote this, thank you so much for doing so. But I want to put this out there for either A, to be corrected by the people who have written this, and therefore to change my mind, or B, to fix what is wrong in case I'm actually right. So, let's get into this, okay? So, the story starts here. As the conflict between the Abyss and Pyre begins to ignite once more, almost everyone from across the realm has sprung to action. Magistrate, Resistance, Paladins, broken goddesses, and wayward monks. Many will eat this call. However, one man has decided that he will sit out, and that man is the man out of time with no future. Atlas, the one who helped put the darkness away, has prevented his reality from ever existing. A paradox of his own creation, he cannot return home. He only has the present to look to, or so he thought. Okay, so first thing that I think that it's wrong here, this doesn't really make a lot of sense that there's a paradox. The paradox would mean that the place where he came from would actually be the final reality of this reality we are in. What he did is he created a new brand reality. Now, where he came from is another time and place that has already happened and existed, right? He didn't came back into his original time. He came back into a copy of the original time and changed it, created a new one. Usually this is how it works. So even if he wanted to go back, he could, but the problem is everything has been destroyed there. There's nothing there left for him. That would have been the best way to go about it. But let's talk about here one thing. If it was a constant loop, this would mean that independently of whatever Atlas just did, the final would the entire thing that happened on his timeline would still have to happen for the Atlas that it's coming up in the future to come back into the past and continuously do this in a loop. That would have been the logical thing. Now, however, the way that they are describing it is that Atlas came back, changed it, and created a new one. Which means, I had this theory for a very long time, and you guys listen, you're more than free to contest this, but we are not really living in the current life, the current timeline. The main timeline, at least. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. And you're wondering, what? What do you mean? So, notice that the real timeline, the main timeline, should be the one where Atlas comes from. We did not live through that. I mean, we could have lived through that and then essentially, they did this big skip all the way till Atlas, and Atlas comes back, and so we went back in time, but that would have been a huge mess, and I don't think that was their intention at all. But the way that I see things, Atlas has come back to the past in this timeline, which is our timeline, to change something, which means that we are not really living the one that has been untouched. We're living the one that has now been changed. We are like the secondary characters. This story is the secondary characters, the secondary storyline to the main storyline where Atlas actually had to come back into the past. So that already makes it a huge problem. Now, obviously, Atlas is not going to disappear. He cannot disappear. He already lived through things. And that's why I'm saying, even if he did change time, he has now created a secondary timeline. Very much likely it is impossible for him to come back to the other one because it's now in a separate dimension almost, technically speaking, right? And I mean, if we're going to talk about time travel, I'll let you guys know right now that if you could potentially time travel, if you time travel just a year back, you would not be standing in the exact same spot where you did the time travel. That's how, the universe is in constant motion, including the planet and so on. It's not easy to just create time travel. It doesn't work like that. You don't just spin a clock. So, but obviously this is a fantasy story, so let's not go too much into that. But the paradox that I'm trying to say here is that it's more logical that another timeline has been created, and there's no point of Atlas going back into his own, because why? Right? The only good reason why he would have come back into the past in the first place was to, and I quote, to actually give a second chance to the people who had to suffer on his timeline. So, coming back, changing things so that the people who had to suffer during that darkness time, because everybody died, including Valera and so on, you know, he wanted to give them a second chance, like a fresh, a little fresh air, you know what I'm saying? So, there you go. That is the first thing that it's bothering me in my mind. Now, let's continue here. The mob may return. Atlas has accepted that. So essentially, he's accepted that apparently it could still turn out to be the exact same thing. Okay. He watched his heroes of legends rallied around him to fend off Yagurath. He saw the might of Azan come down from above and seal her way. If she were to be released one day, they would be there to stop her. He had faith in Demal and his father. Their time was their own to save now, and his part was played. Listen, I don't agree with anything about this line. First of all, their time was their own to save now. If this is reality, Atlas should have never come back and changed anything at all. Whatever happened, it is whatever had to happen. And he shouldn't have changed anything at all. When we say their time was their own to save now, he's essentially saying, I came here and did it once. Now you saw how I do it again. Like, it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't make any sense. Second of all, Atlas saw that everybody could join together to stop the darkness, which is fantastic because that didn't happen in the other timeline. Although it kind of does hint for that everybody grouped up together to work together, but sure. But it says here, he saw the might of Azan come down from above. What happens when Azan goes missing? Exactly what is happening right now. I mean, it says here that he's atop, he says here, as the conflict between the Abyss and the Pyre begins to ignite once more. So there's literally something happening here. Very much likely Azan, he's nowhere to be seen. So Azan can't seal it again. Because he's probably dead or captured. If Yago is to be released right now, she might become too strong for Azan even to stop even when he comes back. Okay, he's literally just saying, nah, it's fun. I'm just tired of this thing. I'm going away. You can't do that. You didn't come back, change this entire thing, and then just decided, you know what, I'm not going to do it anymore. I mean, if it was at the point, then why change it in the first place? Why not going back so far into the back and just live your life as an anonymous guy and just never mess with anything? You didn't have the chance to live a life in your timeline. You know, just live your life in the past. Who knows, right? Because you can't go further into the future. There's nothing there. All right, continuing on. Atlas was supposed to be gone. Again, not. He lived through his life. Even if he did change the future, he is still, his existence still prevails. It'll still continue. This is why I'm saying, if he's even, if we're going by that theory, if he is still alive, if he still exists, then either A, then, both Lex and his mom still had the kid, and the darkness still destroyed everything, and he will come back, and this is just a big-ass loop. Or B, he actually created a secondary timeline, the first timeline still exists, and everything is destroyed there. And therefore, he will not cease to exist, because, why? His timeline still exists, he still lived through it. So, it can't be what is being presented to us right now. His future was erased. Don't think it was, but sure. As the course of time itself was altered. We're just assuming the timelines, universes, dimensions, that there's only one. Okay. Similar to us imagining that we're the only living beings in the entire planet and the entire universe. Only planet Earth can have life. Except he had to exist. If he hadn't, time would never change in the first place. So I'm sorry, no, this is wrong. Because what you're saying is, if he didn't exist, if he ceased to exist, he changed time, right? He's now created a new timeline. Of course he has to cease to exist, because if you're trying to tell me that his life, his timeline has been destroyed, has been deleted, then obviously there's no way that this doesn't make any sense. He has to exist, and his timeline still has to exist as well. He separated them. He created a branch reality, or whatever you want to call it. Okay? like, we've seen this on Back to the Future movies and so on, okay? As he learned from Valera, his use of Crystal's magic is beyond anything they thought possible. He had mastered time, but still couldn't understand it. So we're also putting here in, like, a quote that all of this here in the back could be wrong because we don't understand it. Now, new threats arise that he has never heard of before. An abyssal queen. So we're getting closer to the part where Zahn is not available. Had he delivered his future from one evil to another? So, okay, we're questioning ourselves whether or not the new future is those actually worse from the previous one, potentially being our fault, but we just decided, yeah, I don't want to deal with this no more. That's it. I'm just gonna go away, you know? Am I the only one seeing the irony in this? The pirate possesses two dangerous for anyone to control, including himself. Why? I mean, you use that power to come back and rewrite history, so now you're scared that you messed up, and therefore you're just gonna say, yeah, I'm not gonna let anybody else try to fix it. Okay. It was a burden he must now bear, protecting the realm he fought to save from his discoveries. There was only one solution in his mind, a possible out of infinite of choices. He must travel once more to a time where no one would go. A reality forgotten and resolved. So we're literally confirming that there's multiple realities. Okay, I know already what is down here, and I'll explain it to you in a very simple manner. He goes back into the Alpha lore. There's even specific things here to talk about. For example, seeing Cassie. Then came Cassie, a much more familiar likeness beyond the large bow she carried instead of a crossbow. So this is literally explaining to us that there's another reality, the Alpha reality. Okay, this has been gone. This is gone. This has been rewritten. It was gone. This is the reality where it's stated the Nyx was the reason why Androxus is what it is. And this reality ceased to exist. They rewrote the lore, and now apparently Atlas went back into the Alpha lore that got shut down? What? This then means that his reality never ceased to exist. It just became another separate reality, forgotten. You understand what I'm saying, right? I'm not crazy here, right? But as I'm saying here, just to see if you guys can understand this, it doesn't make a lot of sense that initially we're saying that he knows that something is up, you know, the Abyss and the Pyre have to fight. Azan very much likely has been kidnapped. He says that he trusted the people to just get together, and Azan managed to seal Yagarath away. Then he actually considers the fact that he might have actually made it worse because now there was an Abyssal Queen and everything might be even worse than before. And now he wants to dip because he doesn't want his power to be in his hands or anybody else's hands. So we're contradicting ourselves, because then it says that his reality ceased to exist, but somehow he's still alive because he doesn't understand how time travel works. But then he apparently went back into a place that doesn't exist anymore, that this isn't the real lore, because the real lore states that, you know, Cassie has the crossbow, and here it says, then some Cassie became Cassie, a much more familiar likeness beyond the large bow she carried instead of a crossbow. This here is literally just telling us, because if you guys don't remember, on closed alpha, already like closed beta, Cassie actually had a longbow. Okay, you can actually go on Google, search for Cassie longbow, you'll see gameplay, you'll know what I'm talking about. And essentially they changed that because they wanted to release Shaolin, and it wouldn't feel too well to have two longbow characters, one shooting one way, the other one shooting the other way. So they changed that, they changed the lore, and they made it way more correct, right? So now we're here saying that he went into a place where this is actually a reality. Now, it cannot be the current reality, the one that he came back to change time and stop Yagarath, because if that was the thing, then I'm sorry, but then what? Why is the lore saying that she she got the crossbow from her father? What? She had the bow first, and then she inherited the crossbow from her father. At least something like that would be fantastic. But like this is 100% different. Here, there's a reference also to the fact that Fernando is gay, because they say this. As he wandered his way, he soon saw Fernando in the distance. He looked and sounded much the same, but this one felt off in the same way his current one has. He always knew, though the knight would never admit it, he was not who he said he was. So essentially, this is their way of explaining to why they said that Fernando was gay, but his voice lines completely contradicted the entire thing, right? Why was Fernando supposed to be part of the LGBTQ community if then he literally just is hitting on every single girl possible, right? So they're using this a little bit to confirm that, and I'm absolutely fine with that. Okay, it's actually something in the lore that can now finally states this. Also, if anybody's wondering why I'm seeing this on Paladins Wiki, the website is down, so this is the only place where we have the episode of the Chronicles available. So yeah, here they also talk about this. So here's the thing: they kind of failed at this. Because here's what this says. These types of encounters would continue, from a victor who was older and more grisly than his, to a grok much less poised to be a leader, to a pip much less self-reliant, and each Atlas would find himself amused by how quaint their problems were, and how passionate they all were in their fights over what amounted to personal gain. It suited him, and soon he felt at home, not as a warrior, but as a spectator. Okay, so in this reality, technically speaking, Atlas was never supposed to exist because this reality has been shut down. You know, it was the alpha lore. But in here, they state this: a victor who was older and more grizzled than this. So this is fake. Okay, it was confirmed by a developer that both the old Victor and the new Victor are both canon. The old Victor is supposed to be the father. The young Victor is supposed to be the son, the reworked Victor. In fact, there are cards on certain champions you will be able to see both Victors. Okay, I believe it is, I don't know if it's Nyx or something. One of the latest champions actually has both the old Victor and the new Victor. This is from the current timeline, so unless we're going to get art from different timelines and realities, it doesn't really make sense. This was confirmed by a developer that they were canon, and the one was the father and the other one was the kid. So this year, it's a little bit of a flaw. Doesn't really matter much, but it is a flaw. All right. Continuing on, here's to the worst part, in my opinion. Time would pass as they did. The wounds time dealt with him would heal. He could never live the life he saw in visions. Remember this sentence. That of a future he lived in safe from the horrors he saw it fall to. So he's saying here that in visions, he imagined a reality that never really happened. But then he says this: and this reality is past, however, he would come to make his own future. He would fall in love. In this reality's past, however, currently in this place, remember, he would come to make his own future. He would fall in love. They would build a farm. He would have a daughter. So it doesn't say that this is exactly the reality he was thinking. So this is my problem here, because if this is a brand new reality that he created, unless he actually can dream of whatever the hell he did, in this reality, the moon is not shattered, technically speaking. There's no Yaggorath. He did not lose his hand. This is the reality he imagined, right? So he came into the reality of the Alpha lore, and apparently he fell in love, got a farm, and got a daughter, which is this they're talking about. This is the card called Life Unlived. This is a very important card for lore, because as you can see here, he has both hands, the moon is not shattered, and he has somebody who resembles to be his daughter. So unless they have to redo this art and actually slash off an arm of his, because, you know, he still lost his arm. You can't just travel to a different reality and have your arm back. That's not how time travel works. I mean, how would I know? But either way, like, this doesn't make any sense. All that he lost would be returned, not through... Oh, I guess he got his arm back. That's the thing. Not through saving reality, but by slowing down to appreciate what life offers. He finally had his second chance. Life Unlived, okay. That's a little reference to his ability, second chance. And he took none of it for granted. As his weapons rusted away in the fields, he stashed away from his journal beneath the floorboard the source of time magic kept safe in small farmhouse. He couldn't reason with destroying it in case it was ever needed again. The man at a time must always be ready, but Atlas, he would retire. He would laugh, he would sing, he would rest, though deep down he knew if anything came from his new home, he would be ready to fight them until the end of time. So essentially it's him just saying that he retires, he's sick and tired of what happened, what he had to go through. Again, a lot of inconsistencies in this lore. They bring back the old Alpha lore, but at the same time they say that the place where Atlas comes back has been erased, which doesn't make sense. Now, technically speaking, we should have three different realities. The reality where Yaggorath has been released, the reality where we are in, where Atlas has come over to change things, which, by the way, that means that our reality is not the main one. The main reality should be the... Actually, technically speaking, the main reality should be the Alpha lore. and then only then should be the Atlas reality, because it's like they mirrored it a little bit with some changes, and then finally the one where he came back into the past to change things to create a brand new reality. And then we also have to understand that there's even an extra reality, which is the one from the Midnight Masquerade, if you guys remember correctly, where there's the entire party of Corvus and Cassian and Vora go there to steal something, which is a complete different reality. So we're talking about multiverse sort of theory here, right? But we're talking about some understanding of this multiverse in the wrong way. If I had to do any of this story, how I would do it would be as this. Atlas does not know what is to come. He does not know that Azan is locked. So he's going to put the fate and trust on these people, but he's going to a different reality where he cannot change anything else and make something even worse than he already has done. He believes the people will be able to save them, especially because, and I quote, Atlas actually didn't do much. The only thing he did was come back into the past, tell people that you need to unite. Therefore, Io saw that they were uniting and saw that there was a bigger threat than that, went to help, wasn't fast enough. Yagurath still got released. Azan saw that even a goddess had to be on the realm to try to stop this, so he decided to do it. Where the hell was he on the reality of Atlas? Why did he just let everything happen? And that's where my final theory comes to mind. There's multiple different abyssal lords into each reality. And the one from the Atlas reality is the Abyssal Lord Corvus. Why? Where did that came from, Kreepers? Where did you just came up with that theory? Let me explain. So, in the cards art, in the art of Corvus, the Pyre Lord Corvus, you can see that he's coming from a portal, as if he's leaving a reality, a different reality, to come over to this one. Correct? Correct. Then, I mean, why is he leaving other realities? We've seen that we have a Pyre Lord that is Azan attest to our specific reality. Now, what doesn't make a lot of sense here that I could make any sort of sense with is why Nyx exists on the Alpha lore but not on this lore. Or at least why she does exist in this lore, but why she's not the one responsible for Androxus to be what he is. Because she was the one responsible on the Alpha lore. You can actually go to the Alpha lore and see that Nyx was the deity that Androxus faced and got cursed because, okay? And as such, you can see here there's a huge amount of inconsistency here. We're going back and forth without a lot of things to explain, or at least the right explanation. And, if it was me, if this is reality, Atlas is being a bit, I'm going to say it like this, stupid, because he doesn't seem to understand that even if it goes into the Alpha lore, he will create another paradox. He's not meant to exist in that timeline. If he goes there, he's going to be changing things. The best place for him to be is our timeline. And why? Because he's already changed it. He is now a part of it. The new reality coming up will be written by everybody, including him. It doesn't make any sense that Atlas goes into a now different reality. If they wanted to embrace multiverse, multiple realities, and so on, that is absolutely fine. But him going into live into the other reality just to try to prove that this could be a reality here, but then forgetting that the card shows that it has both hands when he lost one to Vora, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so I'm sorry if I'm sounding very rude to whoever wrote this lore. I'm not, but I'm just very passionate about the lore. So obviously a lot of these things, I will contest them 100% because it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I really, really hope either some of this stuff gets explained, changed, or just rewritten, because people like me who spend their time studying the lore of Paladins, because it's such a wonderful section of the game, and then having this much inconsistency all of a sudden. Speaking of inconsistency, how about Dredge, right? Dredge showed up after the Dragon Calls event, went in there to steal the gauntlet, but you see that the characters that are there are not our current Furia. It is a British Furia. Then it's an old Shaolin. And then it's Emoji that actually has dragons for Poe and Lee. These characters do not exist in our current timeline. Apparently they came from a different timeline. They were called Echoes by the developers back in the day, but never explained why were they on the current timeline that we are living in, which shows then Dredge stealing the gauntlet, being beaten his ass, buying money. So that entire section is wrong. The entire thing of Atlas coming back, unless the only thing he had managed to do was convince people to fight, and therefore it changed everything, it doesn't explain why Azan came down on this reality, not in the other reality. Io maybe because she was scared and she was just like a tiny goddess. Azan not. Like, the Abyssal Lord of his reality didn't seem to help, or either he helped, and maybe that could actually be a thing. You know, if Azan in their reality, imagine there's actually an Azan for that reality as well, and it's not like I'm saying that there's a different, you know, complete different set of Abyssal Lords. Imagine that the Abyssal Lord from his reality actually got snatched away by Nyx as well, and therefore Vora re-released Yago on that reality as well, and then destroying everything, and having no chance of even Azan being able to stop anything. Azan did say that he would burn the entire world to pieces, so he's probably dead, him or wherever the Abyssal Lord is there, but it does make sense that is what I'm saying of Abyssal Lord Corvus being their Abyssal Lord. So it's like one specific pyre, and then each reality is given to a Abyssal Lord and said, and they say to them, you take care of this reality. And the Abyssal Lord Corvus was the one taking care of the Atlas reality and messed up, and he didn't have the power that Azan, for example, had. So Atlas actually, instead of time traveling, he went into a different reality. So that would actually make our reality more of a main reality, where they're all mirrored and a lot of things can be still the same. But for example, in that reality, it was a complete different way that Yaggorath got released and how Vora became Vora. It was actually Corvus who messed up. Then we also had the Abyssal Lord Corvus, which is not really Corvus, as if you understand, which is a complete different Abyssal Lord. So there was a whole different thing, because it's like they're mirrored, but they're not 100% full copy. And therefore, when he came over to ours, he wasn't actually time traveling, he was dimensional traveling. So he came over to a different dimension, which is our current dimension, which is technically speaking the main dimension, the main timeline. That would explain so much more. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. I know this is a bit confusing for a lot of you, but for those who do love the lore and want to talk about more about it, got the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about everything I just told you, everything we just read, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.